Welcome back, everyone, to another decade installment looking at comic books. Today it's the 1970s. Are they good for investment? We're going to talk about that. But most of all, we're going to talk about the era and the comics that came out in it. And we're going to get started in just a moment. Before we unpack it, you can follow us on Instagram every Monday night, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We are live. Definitely check that out if you like to buy these comic books, because actually this is what we specialize in. Where else can people find us?
Yeah, we do a Buy It Now feature over on Instagram as well, where we post books that are available for sale right now. We have some up right now, so you should check it out. We also post every single week on eBay, so definitely follow us on eBay. We also have an Amazon store linked down below with a bunch of products that we use for cleaning and pressing and packing and all of that good stuff.
So before we get started, we buy comic book collections. Guys, if you're thinking of selling collections, please think of us. I buy collections all the time, and I'd like to buy yours. You can see in the description or on this little code. You can just put your phone on it. Anyway, we buy collections. All that works out of the way. Let's talk about the 1970s, an era I have close, near and dear to my heart, because I grew up in that era. So that's probably why I have focused on it professionally. I really wanted to sell high-grade comics from that era because they're not always easy to find. And I know that as the decades go on, they're going to be harder to find in the grade that I want. Kind of easy to find in a dollar box sometimes, not so easy to find in 9.4 or 9.6. So if you're used to like collecting in 9.8, 9.8 only, that's possible for this era, not probable. And I'll talk about some books later on that finding a 9.8 is downright impossible. However, we're not going to start there. 1970s. What did the 1970s have going on?
So historically, a lot was happening in the 70s. The end of the Vietnam War, The Beatles broke up.
The end of Richard Milhouse Nixon with Watergate.
Watergate happened. Elvis Presley died. Rest in peace.
Yep.
The first Earth Day happened.
And environmentalism. I mean, really sprang from movements happening in the very early 70s that carry on today.
Probably because there was an oil crisis.
There was an oil crisis that if you lived through that era, you know about it. You had to line up for cars for hours in some places, and they didn't sell gas every day. It was really interruptive in people's lives. I mean, it stopped the presses. So there was a lot going on. It wasn't an inactive decade. Don't think we'll find one, actually. Every decade has a lot going on, including this one. But let's talk about the 70s. So what kind of toys? The toys from the 70s, by the way, I thought were incredible. Looking back, half of them were scary, the other half were dangerous.
And it's because you grew up in that time, so they're very nostalgic to you.
Me and my brother used to get those cap guns. We used to buy these rolls of caps, and we would point them in each other's ears and just pull the trigger, see how much the other person could stand the loudness of the cap.
Things like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, Nerf Balls, Pet Rocks, Pop Rocks.
Yeah, Pop Rocks I remember just being fascinated. I thought they were like a science experiment. And by the way, at the time, lab kits. You could make these little laboratories. It would come with a little telescope and all these chemicals. Some of them are illegal to even put out there today.
Probably mercury in there.
I remember getting mercury and some other stuff.
Not good for you.
Good stuff.
Super elastic bubble plastic. You definitely wanted to mention that.
Absolutely toxic. I mean, and the funny thing is, I would know that smell at the slightest whiff, and it's the smell of death, because that chemical can kill you. But they were fun. So you could make these bubbles that lasted forever, like this big, and that was the goal. You had a little straw. Show a picture of the product.
They had something like that in the 90s too, but it wasn't that. Things like video game cabinets, asteroids.
I want you to know I was the reigning champion at Godfather's Pizza on their sit-down asteroids game. I could play 25 cents and last an hour. I have turned the machine over numerically before.
Space Invaders too? Did you play Space Invaders?
Not that well.
Galaga. I don't think that came out in the 70s. But
we were playing all those games, Donkey Kong and all this stuff, and they all kind of blended together. Pinball was incredibly popular. Me and my older brother would go to Wonder World, which was this big store in Las Vegas where I grew up, and they had pinball and they had a bookstore. And that's where Danny was buying comic books for the first time.
Also, Atari came out in the 70s. With the Pong being the first game. Everyone knows what Pong is.
I can hear Pong in my head as we speak. I remember.
So boring.
Remember sitting. It was not. It was the most exciting game when it came out.
Also, big, huge blockbuster movies were coming out in the 70s. Movies like Star Wars.
Changed
Jaws,
everything. Lines all around the movie theater.
The Godfather.
Yeah. It's the 1970s, the early 70s really blew up in cinema. Families, I mean, would pile into these movies, and they became really different and eclectic from each other. and it kind of changed into a much grittier, rawer type of movie.
D&D was invented in the 70s.
Yeah.
Big nerd culture.
Nerds unite, man. Dungeons and Dragons kind of kicked it off. Where
Rubik's
it's okay.
Cubes, too. Rubik's Cubes were invented in the 70s.
I was sure I was going to nail that, never have. I know there's a secret, I don't know what it is.
I don't either. Also, disco. Never forget.
Yeah, so there was a huge disco movement, and there was a movement to stop disco, and I jumped on the metal, no disco. Well, it wasn't really metal, it was rock. That was all done by, it was all marketing and stuff. But you know what? I love disco. Rod Stewart's still one of my favorites to listen to. I liked his disco stuff. Donna Summers, so even though I was listening to the hardest rock I could find, I was listening to disco. One more thing about music. It's like the era kicked off with Led Zeppelin and ended up with Rapper's Delight. I still know that whole song by heart. And I bought it, it was on a 33 instead of a 45. It was one song, and it would just have the beat for a long time, and then they did the rap, and I love it. Okay. So the 1960s in comic books was kind of a fun age. I remember us, me and my brother, especially my brother, he was reading things like the Legion of Superheroes. I was reading things like Plastic Man and Archie and some of the more fun stuff. But most of all, a lot of it was kind of slapsticky, not that serious, storylines that didn't necessarily carry over, one-offs, crazy storylines carried over from the 50s. But by the time 1970s hit, especially in the early 70s, everything took a turn. A little bit darker, a little more serious, and the cover artists just exploded. I really call this, in my mind, the decade of covers. The comic covers really became captivating. Two sides to that. One is that's when I grew up looking at comics. The other is when I look back and look at covers. These are covers I stop on every time and say, that's one of my favorite covers. The 70s is full of those. Not always good stories behind those. Things like House of Mystery, House of Secrets stories were mediocre, but there were other storylines that were great because they kicked off things like the new X-Men. They were still doing some great stuff in DC with things like Commandy. So there were still good stories going on. They were developing things like Green Lantern and Green Arrow we'll get into. Really did a grittier, raw, edgier, drug-related stuff, and Urban Decay, where Spider-Man also had some issues that they didn't even put the comic code on because they dealt with drug use and other very mature topics. Definitely gearing comic books more towards an older kid and adult audience. So this really started in 68 when they had all these number ones came out, and when we do the 60s, when you watch our 60s decade, we'll go into detail, but 1968 kick-started. So when you think of the Bronze Age, you're really thinking like late 68, early 69 to kind of 1980. Now, that's not what normally people do, but the time, after 35 centers, me personally, the way I look at it, that's kind of after the Bronze Age. That's more the Copper Age, but that's not the way other people might do it. But that 15-cent cover price is the thing that I always thought of, that comics went from 12 cents to 15 cents. That's how comics broke down. These are 10 centers. These are 12 centers. These are 15. And you don't hear people talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
They're just like,
these are $1.99ers.
This came out in 2022. They never say it's a $3.99er. It's kind of irrelevant when it starts to get to decimals, but that's how you looked at it. So the 15 centers, let's call those the heart of Bronze Age. Some noteworthy books are Iron Man #1, when he finally got his own series starting from #1. Iron Man Submariner #1, it was a one-shot. Then you had Submariner #1. There was a bunch of #1s that came out that were all great. As an early collector, we kind of looked at those as late, like they were like not hard to get, where today they are hard to get, and that's kind of the topic we're talking about. Are these investable? But you have to watch our 60s show to really kind of look at that, because it did tie up a decade of its own that had its own history and its own story to tell.
But we thought we'd mention it since it kind of started this trajectory that we're talking about now.
One thing very distinctive about the 1970s in comic books were the covers. And the artists involved during that decade. Some of them have been involved earlier, but it wasn't until the 1970s that things exploded with some of the best covers they ever drew. So let's talk about comic artists. Lay some out there.
We'll start with Neil Adams, who was huge in the 70s, and we're going to talk about some of his books that he did the cover of later. He was a huge comic book artist.
He was pretty big in the 60s, but he hit his stride in the 70s, especially with Batman. And you'll see there's several books we break down that are Batman covers of his. And also with House of Mystery. Oh my gosh, and House of Secrets. I mean, the stuff he was doing outside of superheroes are some of my favorite covers by him at all. But he was not alone. He was the most sellable artist. He was doing more covers than anyone else. But there were some other artists that were phenomenal. Like who?
Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's Fourth World. 70s, baby.
You got titles like Miracle Man, Forever People, Commandy. They all encompass this fourth world that Jack Kirby had left Marvel, went to DC, and created all this stuff. If you're not familiar with it, you certainly want to check those out. That's not all we're going to talk about today, but as an artist, he was still doing great work, and he started in the beginning of comics.
Yeah,
So
making covers
this
for a
was
long
his
time.
last big decade of really creating some memorable stuff, and at the end of his career.
Gene Colan is another one. He's really known for his romance books in the 60s, but he did a lot of like really popular books in the 70s as well, covers.
In our 60s segment, we're definitely going to talk about his 60s
For
covers.
sure.
Yeah.
Mike Kaluta is a big one.
Yeah, Mike Kaluta kind of flies under the radar a lot. I think he should be in the conversation more often in horror covers. He did a lot of stuff for House of Mystery that was really good. And I think there's a lot of Kaluta appreciators. Shout it out. Drop it in the comments if you love Kaluta's work.
Dave Cockrum did a lot of X-Men, like really popular X-Men covers in the 70s that we're going to talk about later as well.
Yeah, and very popular and very good artist. So there was a lot of bench strength in the 1970s.
Yeah. Jim Aparo is another one.
Well-regarded artist that was all over many, many titles. Love Aparo art, actually.
Bernie Wrightson. You have to talk about Bernie Wrightson.
You didn't think we were going to forget. I mean, and Bernie did not do a lot of covers.
But the ones he did do,
Yeah,
they were good.
much respect to Bernie Wrightson.
Another one we really like, just overall, is Mike Ploog. I love Mike Ploog's covers.
Yeah, and Mike Ploog had a Wrightson-esque, but also a Frank Bruner-esque.
He's literally next on the list.
Yeah, because it's like Wrightson, Ploog, and Bruner all had saliva dripping off teeth and had this realism that I really like. It edged on cartoons. It was trying to relay action, but I love their art. All three of them really attract my eye.
And yeah, Frank Bruner was literally next on my list, which is so funny. Also, Joe Kubert. I think of all of his like weird War Tales covers.
Joe Kubert was still doing so much work in the 70s, but remember, he'd been around for decades by now, but he was not done yet, so he's definitely a name that you need to mention when you talk about 70s books.
Nick Cardy.
Nick Cardy, once again, he was in everything from Superman to the horror stuff. If it was in DC, he was probably drawing it. I remember he did some great Aquaman covers that when you look at them, you're like, that is a fantastic cover. Remember, 70s is the era for covers. You might be surprised where you find really good covers, what series they're in.
Barry Windsor Smith.
Once again, a guy that didn't do a lot of covers, and he did work even later than the 70s, but come on. Conan, he did some incredible work in the Avengers interiors. He's just a great artist.
Mike Grell.
Yeah, and if you think of this era, a lot of people were reading Warlord. And Warlord was in a lot of different stuff, but it had a long-running series. Not really talked about or collected as much today, but people do appreciate Grell. They liked his stuff on Green Arrow, which is fantastic, but I wouldn't say it's investment quality stuff. This stuff's more for the collector.
Jack Sparling.
Yeah, Jack Sparling would pepper in these horror covers and other covers. Great artist. If you're not familiar with him, look at some of his covers and see if you don't appreciate where he was coming from.
Luis Dominguez did a lot of horror covers that you really like.
Yeah, in the pantheon of great horror cover artists, I put him in the top 5 from the early 70s. I thought he was doing some great stuff. One great thing about these books is you can go into a sense of discovery and you've never seen a title, and all of a sudden you go through and what are you going to notice? The covers. And really a lot of people collect 70s stuff for the covers, and Luis Dominguez certainly added to that.
Now, the last one I have written down is John Romita. I know that there are more. Please list them below. But John Romita is the last one I have written down.
And we know that he did great stuff in the 60s, but he didn't stop. So John Romita Jr., the Romita name lived on all through the 70s.
There were also a ton of new characters introduced in the 1970s, and you're going to recognize every single one of these.
Yeah, we do this for every era, and this one is rich with characters. I'm going to let Rachel rifle some off.
We have Valkyrie from 1970.
By the way, incredibly popular cover from the Thor universe immediately.
Yep.
Yep.
Wolverine. Hello.
Heard of him.
Punisher. We have Storm from X-Men. Colossus. Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler was actually borrowed from the 60s and DC. It was a character that wasn't used, and they ended up using it in X-Men.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Carol Danvers' Mrs. Marvel.
Yeah.
Moon Knight, Howard the Duck. So those are some of the Marvel characters. We have some DC characters as well that came out in the 1970s. Darkseid, Jonah Hex.
Yes.
Travis Morgan, Warlord, we've already mentioned him.
Yep.
Huntress, and Power Girl. So those are some of the characters that were announced and introduced in the 70s. There's a ton more. Please tell us down below the ones
Well,
you
there's
missed.
Commandy, and there's other characters that were created. You guys go ahead and fill it in.
Along with the new characters that started, there were a ton of series that started in the 70s that kicked off storylines about new characters as well.
Yeah.
Things like Tomb of Dracula. That's a big one. Defenders, which is another big one.
Ran for a long time.
Giant Size X-Men.
Giant Size X-Men was an annual.
Yeah, it was an annual.
Yeah.
But that's a big book, so we're going to talk about it.
I think it's a big book.
Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, The Eternals, Hero for Hire, Iron Fist, Ghost Rider, Conan, Spectacular Spider-Man, Spidey Super Stories, Marvel Team Up, Howard the Duck, Star Wars, The Cat, Monster of Frankenstein. Those are all Marvel. Then we have...
And that's not complete by a stretch.
No.
We just want to give you a feel for like what people were reading and what they were creating.
There's so many. So here's some from DC. We have Swamp Thing, The Demon, Warlord, Commandy, Shazam, Isis, Super Friends, first issue special. And then I threw out some independents too that started in the 70s. Things like Slow Death, Cerebus, American Splendor, Fantagor. So many series that I'm sure you've heard of, if not all of them, most of them. That all started in the 70s.
And a lot of those had staying power, and if they didn't, they had an impact. All of them had great art.
All of them had cool covers.
Yeah. all of them kind of took up this enthusiasm that was happening in collecting. So at the beginning of the 70s, and let's call it the late 60s, collecting was a thing. It wasn't as well known. It was almost a joke if you collected comic books. People would look at you like you had a pile of cheap Archies that were coverless, and what is that? What good is that in life? Where in the 70s, most of the big conventions started in the 1970s. The sale of comic book bags really changed the industry. People started to protect their comic books rather than throw them in the side drawer or have them as a coaster for their coffee cup. People bought comics to read them. A lot of people had subscriptions. Marvel was notorious for folding it in half, and you'd get what's called a subscription crease, which is a line right down the center. But
we see those all the time.
a lot of people had subscriptions. There was all kinds of momentum in comic books. And by the end of the 1970s, there were a lot of collectors, people that were going to actual comic book stores that didn't really exist before 1970, where I hung out in a comic book store in the mid-70s. They sold comic books. That was it.
Well, and the Comic Cons that started in the 70s, they were for comic books. Like, they were not what they are today.
Yeah.
They were for the comic
That's
collectors.
a great point. They were, and you would find people like Bernie Wrights and Jack Kirby. They would
imagine that?
They would do a sketch for you. There'd be 200 people there. Yeah, the 70s were a vibrant time for the growth of collecting comic books. And like I said, people had collected. That was a thing. But not like by the time 1980 hit, there were some collectors out there that had put together some collections. Also, some collections were found. Things like the Mile High Collection. Mile High Collection changed the way that people looked at the old comic books they necessarily couldn't find high-grade copies of, where the Mile High pretty much had everything untouched. They were like uncirculated. They were stored in perfect condition, and that collection has changed the hobby. My friend Richard from Bedrock Comics said that he was there as they were unpacking portions of it, and he was so young, he thought, I bet this happens every year. And when I spoke to him, he goes, it hasn't happened since. So, it was an amazing event in comic books, and if you don't know about it, definitely watch a video. Those comic books still demand a premium just because they were in that collection.
Another big thing that happened in the 70s was the Overstreet price guide.
Yeah.
They kind of set the stage prior to CGC on like grading comic books.
And pricing.
And pricing, yes.
It became the Bible for pricing.
Yes, because they had a 3-grade system, which was good, fine, and mint. That's how they graded their comic books in their Overstreet guide. And then they also had the price guide, which helped people gauge how much a book should be worth.
Yeah, by the end of the 70s, it started to develop into some more grades. They were like the gold standard, and I still think in some ways they can be. People disregard their prices and think that they're not as current. I think they're pretty good. their pricing's pretty good, especially for raw books.
It's different now because we have such high-grade books out there that the price guide doesn't really determine prices for.
What it does, the Overstreet guide stops at 9.2. And after near mint minus, they say open market. Like whatever the market bears is what that book can get. That's why super high-grade books are going to be worth a lot more, but the market will dictate how much. They never wanted to put a price on that.
Yeah, and I think 9.2 is fair because most books that haven't been touched a lot are 9.2.
Yeah, especially...
It's pretty standard.
It's not a bad grade for if you had a box from 1970 and they were 9.2, you'd be doing backflips.
True. With the start of like comic book stores becoming more prevalent in the 70s, you could also buy comic books in a lot of other different places at this time. Places like 7-Eleven, convenience stores in general would sell comic books. Bookstores sometimes would have comic books that you can purchase. I don't remember if there was anywhere else that you said you could buy comics from back then.
Well, it's interesting. Follow the UPC code or the direct marking because 15 centers did not have either, right? And then as you get on into like 30 centers, 35 centers, you'll start seeing the UPC code. And as you get farther on, when you see the direct, that is the change in distribution to where the price was just on it and you would use one of those old kind of cash registers where you ding, ding, jink, and you just pound it in to electronic systems where they started scanning things for inventory. So you can follow that through pricing. If you don't see either on there, a UPC code or a direct label, then you know it was when cash registers were still old school. Yeah, you would find them at drugstores. You'd find them used bookstores if you want old books. There were some comic dealers. You had to live in some pretty big cities for that. So it was very different where it became a little more organized in the 70s. We're talking about in the 1970s, they're selling books from the 50s and 60s and new books. By the time the mid-70s to late 70s, those books were starting to become hoarded from the 70s. I mean, some of that stuff came out. You couldn't get a copy. Or you realize, hey, I want a copy, and you really had to go to a comic book store. You could also order books from Inside Comics. They had like all these advertisings. Before we get into the books we're talking about, we're really aiming for the center of the target. We're not trying to get to the fringe, and we like fringe, and I love talking about it. But we're going to talk about the big books from the 70s and things that really cemented this era for what it is. But I'll tell you from an investment standpoint, a couple of things from the 70s that really stand out are early 70s horror books, primarily from DC, but from other publishers, and very early romance books from the 70s, primarily from DC, that are hard to find because those were not the books that were necessarily getting bagged. Those were not the books. People were really focused on superheroes. So it was the things that were the most unpopular or things that people did not take as seriously. When you look back and you look at the covers, and this is about the covers, you're going to say, wow, what an amazing book. My friend Greggy here, he's going to talk about it a little bit, about the stuff that's a little bit harder to find. I just got to say, Greggy collects 1970s DC. I think he has a complete collection. He's one of the foremost Bronze Age collectors in the world. So when this guy talks, I listen. Anyway, so check this out. This is from San Diego Comic-Con 2025 when I was chatting with Greggy. Is there anything that's very hard to find from the Bronze Age?
I mean, in terms of grade-wise, I would consider the romance, definitely. It's much more difficult.
DC or all romance? Charlton?
I think the Marvel romances are easier, but I think DC's are generally harder. I wouldn't say, it's hard to say with Charlton because that I've never really been that interested in. But I think Charlton may be harder just because no one really seemed to really collect Charlton.
Right.
Wasn't really that popular. I think a lot of their 60s stuff, especially with Ditko art, is more popular than most of the 70s stuff. But in general, DC has a specific charm, especially in the bronze for the romance. Because I don't know if many of your viewers have seen a lot of the DC covers, but there's a lot of innuendos in those covers, and I mean, you get disappointed when you try to read the story. Unfortunately, I have tried.
The cover's better than the story?
Yeah, it's covered way more better than the story, and I like it mainly because I'm just a completist, so I can't say, I don't want to say I'm a DC completist if I'm not going to try to collect the romance. I've lucked out over the years of getting a bunch in high grade at once, but it's not something you really see that often anymore. So,
Thanks, Greggy.
no, thank you.
Before we get into the books we're going to be breaking down today, for all of the decades, we are breaking down each decade into key points based on how good that decade is to invest in. And so we break it down into 5 key points, the key points being availability, demand, price, track record of sales, and relevance. So think about that as we're going through all of these books. At the end, we will give you a number out of 5 on whether or not we think this is a good decade to invest in.
And real quick, I mean, the way one person looks at this and the way another person looks at this, I would like all my books 9.4. Well, that would change this metric immensely because some of them are impossible to find in 9.4. And if you do find them, they become unaffordable. You have to bear out the fact that it depends on how you collect, on how much this applies. So we tried to, once again, be really average about it.
Yeah, we try to do an average aggregate. And we'll talk about that at the end, so definitely stay tuned for that.
We're going to kick it off in no particular order. House of Secrets 92, the first appearance of Swamp Thing, gray tone cover, Bernie Wrightson cover.
Iconic. It came out in 1971. And ooh, do I have some numbers to share it with you.
So this, I would consider, I have a 9.0 of this currently, and my brother will probably own that book because he wants it really bad. But it's a book that I think a lot of people, even if they don't collect DC, they want this.
I mean, look at it. So there are 3,421 total graded copies, which was lower than I expected.
That's a lot.
I expected it to be more because of how popular it is.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I don't know what the print run is on it, but yeah, for that year, 1971.
For that era, those books were not considered. Everyone liked Bernie Wrightson. Don't get me wrong. They were coming off the Frank Frazetta train from earlier decades, and he was reminiscent of that. That is a lot, by the way.
Well, let me see. Let me tell you how many 9/8 there are. There's 3.
That's insane.
3. There's 29 6s, and there are 28 9/4s.
See, so that's like that particular 9.4, 9.6 to 9.8. Forget 9.8. It's just a pipe
I know
dream.
3. I do have data for 9/8, but
Pipe dream, right?
It's insane.
You want a 9.4 because you want a near mint copy, right? Okay. I'm telling you, it's going to be incredibly expensive. And that's why this book is so sought after, because it doesn't have any gloss on it. I don't know if you know that. So really, you're getting the vibe of the book from the gray tone nature of it. Any defect that shows up on that, it doesn't look good. So as you go into like, I cannot note any defects, oh boy, do they get expensive.
So I have 9.8 and 9.6 info. Or I did the price point at what it sold recently, and then the highest it ever sold for.
Great.
Ever. So in 9.8, the most recent sale was in 2024 for $84,000.
Nice, that's a song.
For the 3 9/8s that exist in the world. The highest sale ever was $90,000 in 2021. So it's not far off.
No, and that was remember the market had gone loopy back then.
Yeah.
But this book will always be in demand. I just cannot imagine a time that this cover's not as cool as I just said it was.
The only thing that could change that is if more 9/8s come out in the future. So like that could change some things. Or if a 9/9 pops off at some point, God forbid.
And you wouldn't even know it. Someone would find 40 of them in perfect condition in some warehouse find and start slowly inserting them in the market. And I promise you, as soon as 5 or 6 of those came out, you'd see the price start to go like this. So it's very delicate, this balance and investment. When you say, I have the highest graded, there's only 3. 6 months later, you look, there's 5. You're like, ooh, that means there's almost 50% more. And then a year later, there's 7. Does that happen? It does. So
Yeah.
There's still undiscovered books out there. There's still collectors that have had these just put away for decades.
So for 9.6, the most recent sale of a 9.6 was in 2023, and it sold for $33,600.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money for a 9.6. That is the highest it's ever sold for in 9.6 as well, and it was very recent. So that's pretty surprising.
Last 2 years.
We also wanted to give you some raw comic data. So if you were to buy, like,
You just want a copy.
if you just want a raw copy of
You
this,
don't care what it looks like.
you don't want a 9.8, which is fair. You could get a low grade copy for around $700, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah, it might have a pop staple and it might be missing a piece and things like that. But the thing about this book is that if you're shooting for a 9.8, you're unrealistic. I think a great grade to invest in this is 8.0 and up, because that you'll see the senses start to decline as you go up in grade in terms of how many of those have ever been slapped through CGC? What's the next book?
The next book is DC 100-page Super Spectacular number 4, iconic Bernie Wrightson cover. It's technically the first issue of DC 100-page Super Spectacular, and it came out in 1971.
But it's issue 4 of the series on the cover. So each one of the DC 100-page Super Spectaculars had like one issue. This is Fear number 4, where you have Superman, you have Batman. So sometimes there would be double numbers. Sometimes they just put one out and it would just be like J23.
SC5.
But 100-page Super Spectaculars on their own were a big part of what was going on, and people wanted a volume of information. They wanted to read a lot of comic books.
Get it. And the coolest thing about this book is the back cover is a version of the front cover. We love this book. We've had it many copies.
Yes, sold my double cover version of it to a friend, and it's a book that I think is one of the best horror covers drawn in the 70s.
I personally think that this book is undervalued, and I will tell you why right now with my numbers. Census data, there are 241 total graded copies of this book.
It's gone up, okay?
How many were there before? Do you remember?
It's never high. I mean, it's always been low, so it feels like it's going up.
The highest graded copy is a 9.6. There's 4. There are also 4 9.4s. So high grade copies of this are hard to come by.
So you won't see those sales very often. That's why it kind of, if there's 8 copies known to exist in those 2 grades, you're barely ever going to see a sale. We don't know. We just really, whatever number she's about to spit, I'm here to tell you, we don't know, because if a 9.6 came to market, I wouldn't be surprised. How much? Give us numbers.
I do want to preface before I continue on, all of my information is gathered from GP Analysis, and it's based on CGC sales. So I know there are a lot of other grading companies out there that might have different numbers, just to preface.
Yeah, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. I'm just letting you know that's where we got the information from. You can access it too if you want. The most recent sale of a 9.6 was in 2014. It sold for $5,700 over 11 years ago. Which, who knows how much that would sell for today? I don't. The highest it's ever sold for was $6,274 in 2011.
So when I first came back to the hobby, I was looking at books I wanted to collect. I came upon this. I'm like, I definitely want a copy. Hey, Danny, where can I find a 9.4? He started laughing. He's like, well, I think Greggy has one. You met Greggy.
The guy who has everything.
This is how much I've learned since then. So I reach out to Greggy on the CGC board, where he's quite famous, actually. Everyone knows who Greggy is. And I said, hey, Greggy, I heard you have this book. Would you be interested in selling? And I can only imagine when he opened that, he's like, are you a fool?
Who is this person asking me this question?
First of all, a couple things. I bet you there's a line of people that want his copy, because he has a very high-grade copy. Second of all, he said no. Fair. Now, looking back, I would never ask him that today. It would be more like this. This is comic etiquette. Oh, Mr. Greggy, if you ever want to sell that, can I be somewhere on the list of people that you let know?
Think of me.
Because really, that's an auction book. You need to put that to auction. Let the people throw their hats in the ring if he ever sells it.
Who knows how much that would go for today?
Yeah, I'm sure he's probably got a 9.4. I don't know off the top of my head. It's not a 9.2, I would say. But yeah, those books are the cat's meow. Anyway, and we're the second book into the list. We have a lot more.
Yeah, I will say a 9.4 sold more recently. It sold in 2019 for $2,172. Yeah. Still pre-comic boom, but that's... I don't know. I think it would sell for very much more. If it doesn't sell today.
A 9.4 would not surprise me in the $10,000 to $15,000 range if it had white pages and it looked good. That back covers everything.
It's amazing.
The back covers everything on that book.
And we just want to mention, too, the DC 100-page Super Spectacular number 5, because it is very hard to get. I'll show it up on the screen. The romance cover.
Yeah, you don't know about this. It's not worth a great deal because it never trades, because no one can ever find it in grade.
There's less than 100 of them graded.
It was the only romance book in this series. And remember what I said about DC Romance. So there's more collectors than there are high-grade copies. So this book is coveted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, the next book is Batman 227. It is from 1970, the Detective Comics 31, homage by Neil Adams.
No, I've never owned a high-grade copy of this. It's one of the books I would like to own. and put away for a long time and hold it before I ever sell it.
Who would look at that cover and not like it? That's my question. Like, it's just cool.
Neil Adams took a great cover and made it world class. I mean, I don't even know what to say. If you don't know about this book, welcome. If you do know about this book, let me know if you own a copy. If you're looking for a copy, they're not like super common. It's not like you just see them because they're expensive. It's like people hoard these, and they want them. So there's so many covers we're not even going to show you, but this is just an example of Neil Adams doing it, man.
Doing his thing.
Doing it.
There are 2,394 total graded copies on the census.
That's a lot if you ask me.
There are a lot. 9 9/8s and 39 6s.
So how much are they going for?
So a 9/8 recently sold, this was in 2024, for $19,200.
Marron.
I didn't look to see if it had white pages. I kind of wish I did.
I bet it did.
It probably did.
It feels like it did.
The highest it's ever sold for is $42,000, and that was during the boom in 2022.
Yeah. So I think 9/8's an unrealistic grade. Let's say that you're a really high grade comic book collector. Is a 9.4 okay or a 9.6? What are they doing?
So for a 9.6, the most recent sale of a 9.6 was in 2025, and it was $8,420.
Yeah, I think that these are doing this number, right? So all books do that. I think they go up and down. I think from an investment perspective, I would not want to pay the top of the market.
Well, the highest it sold for was $8,400, so it's not far from the highest it's ever sold for.
Yeah, but you got that 10% variation, right?
Yeah.
Where it can go up and down 10%. You don't want it to go down.
Absolutely.
I would look for a deal or look for the right book. Perfectly centered, great staples, all of that stuff. From an investment perspective, expecting it to double from this point is unrealistic in a, let's say, a 5-year timeline. Don't know if it will or won't, but to have this book, it's a pretty solid book that people don't have a hard time selling.
Yeah. If you were looking for a raw copy of this, how much do you think it would cost to get like a low grade copy?
So I didn't know, and Rachel whispered 200. So around 200.
Surprisingly, that's not too bad. I feel like
I think it's expensive for a super low grade 70s book.
I would hope it has a cover because that's the whole point.
What? Now Batman was super popular in this era, and the stories were good, and people loved him. The covers were like crazy good. Yeah, that'd be great if you picked up a copy for 200 and it rounded out your collection. I don't think you'd be ashamed of that on any level.
All right, the next book is Marvel Spotlight number 5. First appearance of Ghost Rider, Mike Ploog cover from 1972.
A lot of what makes this book popular, other than a really cool character, is that cover. It is a 10 out of 10. It is a Bat Out of Hell type of cover. It kind of reminds me of the cover of Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. It kind of looks like that.
I'm sure that those were vibes given for that cover.
However, this particular book is, to many people, like the definitive Bronze Age book.
I get it. The numbers are crazy for this one. There are 5,180 total graded copies. That's a lot.
Well, yeah. Let's see. How many 9/8s are there?
Guess. And
6.
There are exactly 6. How did you know that?
Because there used to be 4.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Because one of them were mine. I owned one of them at one point, but I sold it in 2003. If you bought it, please make a comment. You would have bought it on eBay for $930. That's what I sold it for.
And you were stoked about that.
In an original slab, first year. But one of them were mine, so I've always kind of tracked on them. At one point, I thought I wanted one. Then the price went like that, and I went like, no.
So there are 6 9/8s, there are 25 9/6s, and there are 32 9/4s.
9.6 is like the play. If you can get a 9.6, you're in a 24 group of people. I think that there's still probably copies out there that are high grade. It'd be crazy if somebody found 20 of these.
That would be bad for investors.
The cover is so black. I mean, it's like
hard.
Get your hazmat suit on to handle that thing.
I know people hate that too, like that whole if a cover is black. Spine ticks is still a spine tick, but like there's something different about a black cover with a spine tick.
I disagree with that. People have said that, but here's the deal. On a white cover, you can't see it as much. It's kind of like buying a white car or a black car. How dirty a black car looks when it's dirty and a white car doesn't look dirty. Mm-hmm. Same deal. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that because I'm sure someone will say something.
It really is aesthetics.
Yes. So if you've been tracking on this book at all, you already know what the highest sale of this book ever was. In 9/8, the highest sale and the most recent sale was in 2024 for $360,000.
So there was a earlier copy that sold for $250,000, give or take. And I remember me and my brother having long conversations about the comic bust happened after the comic boom, and prices started going down. And we were like, wow, I bet you the next one sells for $75,000. There's none out there, right? Well, here we go, 2024. It went for more. And it really defied explanation. It's like this book, no, it doesn't. This book, there's not enough in the market to meet the demand, and people are willing to throw a house at it. Because that's literally what
5,000.
they literally
2%.
could have bought a house with that money, but instead they bought a Ghost Rider comic book.
That's an investment, or they just really wanted it.
So bad, so bad.
So let's talk about 9.6, which is a little bit more attainable. I mean, it's still a lot of money.
No, it's not.
Still a lot of money. This is crazy though. So the most recent sale was this year in 2025 for $26,400 for a 9.6.
So much money.
That's so much money. The highest it's ever sold for in 9.6.
75.
$90,000. That was during the boom 2022.
Yeah. People were specking on it hard. I think it's a great character. He's going to be around for a long, long, long time. He's great for this era. I think that if you had a 9.0 or an 8.0 or an 8.5 of that, you'd be very happy with it if it looked good.
If you were going to buy a low-grade raw copy of this, you could get one for around $300.
Yeah, so
pretty good.
Well, if you notice, in the 80s, it seemed like $100 you can get most.
I tried to get the lowest price points for the raw books on these as well. They're much higher than the books from the
70s is a whoop, whoop, whoop. We've leveled up.
It's like, again, hopefully it has a cover. Like, I don't know. I didn't look at the sale.
We're talking about some monsters too. But
yeah, these are all big keys.
Monsters of Rock.
All right, the next book is Hulk 181.
That thing.
First appearance of Wolverine from 1974. John Romita cover.
Here's the deal, right? A couple things were going on. You had your Mark Jewelers that were in the market, right? So if you live by a base, there's a Mark Jeweler insert you could buy jewelry with. And those do fetch a little more. But also, Marvel was playing a game called the Marvel Value Stamp. And they put this stamp inside of comic books, and you cut it out, and you fill up like a photo album, and you get all the Marvel Value Stamps. There was a Marvel Value Stamp in here that a lot of people cut out. So you'll find a lot of copies that get a green label, which means incomplete from CGC, because someone cut out the Marvel stamp. But what it shows you is the fandom that was going on then. Because, look, I've seen a lot of comics, and in the 60s and 70s, people cut things out, man. They did.
And it's crazy. I know in the CGC grading guide, it does say that there's an amount of paper that has to be missing for it to be considered incomplete. And I guess the Marvel stamp is the size that it's incomplete.
Or affect the story.
So there are 17,580 copies of this out in the world graded. 199.
Ridiculous.
Which is insane. 122 9.8s and 375 9.6s.
Yeah, would you want a 9.9 over a 9.8? I mean, what could the difference really be? I don't know.
I feel like in my brain, I compare this to like ASM 300. That's like the same energy that this book gives off in the 70s that book did in the 80s.
Not the same money, though.
Not the same money. But as far as like the amount of books that are out there. So I didn't get the 9.9 sale. I don't think that it's tracked anymore.
I don't even want to talk about that.
Okay, so 9.8. The most recent sale was this year, 2025. It sold for $60,000. These are just direct. They're not.
It's gone down. They were selling for higher, yeah.
The highest it's ever sold for, $138,000. Yeah. That was in 2022.
So somebody might have got that $60,000 and said, "Man, what a bummer. That should have been $150,000."
I would like to see when the 9.9 got graded and if that had any effect on that price.
I really think it matters how it looks, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. Buy the book, not the grade. For a 9.6, the most recent sale was 2025 for $16,800.
This book's holding its own.
It's definitely worth money.
It's the second appearance of Wolverine. We could have done 180, which is the first cameo. Could have done 182, which is another full appearance, so it's the third appearance. We didn't. I mean, because those two were not highly regarded 25 years ago like they are today. It's always been 181. 181's always been popular. Wolverine looking like that. I mean, in that suit, in this story, he's kind of like another guy, I'll tell you in a minute when we get there, that he's never stopped being published ever since it came out. They would skip around a couple issues. Next thing you know, he's going to have his own title. He's going to be in a bunch of different titles, and Hugh Jackman plays him, and everyone loves that. So he's really part of the pop culture sensibility.
If you were to buy a low-grade copy of this raw, you're looking at between $700 to $1,000.
Yeah, the Raws are so different from the 80s to the 70s,
And
right?
I don't know if those have Marvel stamps in them, to be honest. I don't know if they do.
That's the value play, by the way. Sometimes you can get this copy and it looks fantastic, and you pay 40-50% less.
Because it doesn't have
Maybe.
the stamp.
You might have to pay 30% less because they're so popular, but sometimes any copy is better than no copy at all.
Absolutely. All right, the next book is Werewolf by Night, number 32, the first appearance of Moon Knight and his origin, 1975, Al Milgrom and Gil Kane.
Popular character, not the most popular, but he's had a bunch of different series. I've owned this book. I had a 9.2 of this. Bought and sold in the comic boom. Did really well on it. And it's a book I'd like to own again. I've never owned a second copy of this. I'd like to own it. I love the cover. I like the book. I like the series Werewolf by Night. I'd like to collect the entire series. So
There's some really cool covers.
there's cool covers, cool characters. So anyway.
So there's 5,120 total graded copies. 25 of those are 9/8.
Yeah.
That's actually quite a bit. 95 are 9/6s and 200 9/4s. It's a lot of 9/4s.
It is.
The most recent sale of this book in 9/8 was in 2025 for $21,600.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess from an investment perspective, you might think 9.8's the play. I think 9.6 is the play. Where we're at with 9.6s.
Well, the highest a 9.8 ever sold for was $70,000,
Right.
which is insane. For 9.6, the most recent sale of a 9.6 was 2025 for $8,495.
Yeah, that's great.
The highest that ever sold for was $26,000.
Yeah. See, it's gone down from that high. Unique character. He's got 3 different personalities that are 3 different people. It's really a fun ride.
It's fun.
It's a fun ride.
If you were to buy a low-grade copy of this raw, you're looking at about $500.
That's great. I bet some people would bend over backwards to get a $500 copy
I mean,
of
it's
this.
way better than $8,000.
You're not going to easily find any of these that we're saying raw. You'll have to really watch things like eBay.
Yeah. The next book is Detective Comics 411. It's from 1971. The first appearance of Talia al Ghul, Ra al Ghul's daughter, and Neil Adams did the cover.
And shout out to Batman 232, show a cover. This is one of my favorites. So this is when Neil Adams, like I said at the beginning, every cover is like, wow, what an incredible cover. But let's talk some numbers on this first appearance of Talia.
So the census shows that there are 1,158 total graded copies of this book. 6 of them are 9/8, 11 9/6s, and
so low.
31 9/4s. So a lot more 9/4s than everything else. A 9/8 sold in 2022. That's the last time that a 9/8 has sold for $24,000.
Yeah. 9.8, once again, I don't think that your common collector needs a 9.8. I mean, 9.6s look so good. What are 9.6s doing?
Well, the highest that a 9/8 sold for was $56,000.
Insane.
Which was in the same year. I don't really understand how that's possible, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't either.
So a 9/6 sold this year, 2025, for $3,600.
I think whoever got that's probably happy with that price, man.
Because the highest it's ever sold for in 9/6 was $5,760. That was in 2023. So a little past the boom.
I don't know if this book's hit its bottom, but it's definitely an investable book. Really one of the best runs in detective at the time. Great book that everyone should probably be aware of.
And if you wanted to buy a raw, low-grade copy of this, you could get it for around $100, which is pretty good.
That's great.
Yeah.
That makes this an affordable book to collect in any condition. Not so affordable above 9.0. Just saying, it gets a little pricey.
All right, the next book is X-Men 94 from 1975. The new X-Men begins. This is a Dave Cockrum cover.
Great cover, but I've always liked this cover.
And there are a lot of these. There are a lot of copies of this.
This was probably the most popular series after the launch of this new team in the 70s. It was right up there. So let's talk about it.
There are 10,125 total graded copies.
It's a lot.
52 9/8s, 131 9/6s.
Wow, that's such a low percentage of the census.
Yeah,
you know?
there are not a lot of high-grade copies of it. There was a sale recently in 2025 for a 9/8, $48,301.
That's insane. I wonder if the person who won it on a $1 increment.
$1 auction.
You know it was an auction, right?
The highest it's ever sold for was $72,000 during the boom, 2021. 9/6s are a little more affordable. Still expensive. The most recent sale was in 2025 for $6,250 in 9/6.
I would definitely think 9.6 is just fine.
It's fine. $6,000 is
Just
not
fine.
nothing either.
That's expensive.
And if you wanted to get a low grade raw copy of this, you could get one for around $200.
Good luck.
Good luck. It probably doesn't have a cover. Sorry to
You know,
sad
in
about
any
that.
grade, this book's going to fly out the door. If someone priced it at 500, it wouldn't. But I think in the 200 range, yeah, it makes sense. It would fly out the door.
Yeah. All right, next up is Green Lantern 76. Green Lantern Green Arrow storyline begins. 1970, Neil Adams cover.
One of the best covers, really it looked at to kick off the Bronze Age. I talked about 68 being a year of number ones and what people consider the beginning of the Bronze Age. This book's really considered the beginning of the heart of the Bronze Age, being a grittier, fantastic stories. Big focus in comic books on having a more mature and developed story and not being so silly. Also, oh my gosh, these covers. And this run was so popular at the time. Even in the 80s, I remember people talking about this particular run of Green Lantern and Green Arrow. Yeah.
There are 2,693 total graded copies, 2 9/8s,
Insane.
18 9/6s, and 56 9/4s. Wow, wow, wow. There's only one sale of a 9/8 that exists on GPA, and it was from 2014 for $31,000. Who knows how much that would sell for today? Because I sure don't.
It's a crapshoot.
But a 9/6 just recently sold in 2025 for $11,400.
Wow. This book does a lot of this too. So I think it's always going to be popular. I think Neil Adams, people are I see a lot of people now collecting just Neil Adams covers.
You know what's really interesting though? The highest that this book has ever sold for was in 2009 for $30,000.
Wow. Must have been the only one.
And it also probably was like around that time that book was really like getting hot again, I assume.
It used to be very popular.
Yeah, it's like it's gone through ebbs and flows of popularity.
I think with the introduction of Green Lantern back into pop culture through what DC's doing now, it will just make this more popular and more in demand. Yeah.
2009, $30,000 though, that's crazy.
A lot of money.
If you wanted to get a low grade copy of this, you could get it for around $150, $200.
Yeah. We just sold one in that range for that price.
We did.
Yeah.
All right, next up, I love this cover. It's Batman 251, classic Joker cover by Neil Adams from 1973.
I've had a 9/6 white pages of this.
And it looked good.
And I didn't want to sell it, but, you know, sometimes you have to. And this really kicked off, this and the Joker series kicked off Joker being a maniacal, crazy killer. And no more ha ha ha. It was like ha ha ha. So
Like, get out of the way, Riddler, because here comes the Joker.
nobody does it like Neil Adams with this cover. And then the storylines after this, he turned from bad guy to horrible guy. Yeah.
I love the Joker. There's 4,191 total. I mean, Heath Ledger, he's the best Joker.
Heath Ledger.
He's the best. 4,191 total graded copies, 32 9/8s, 116 9/6s, and 196 9/4s.
9/4 is the play there if you want to get a high grade copy. What are numbers looking like?
So a 9/8 recently sold in 2025 for $26,400.
Okay.
I was actually surprised. I thought it was going to be higher than that.
That's a chunk of change, man.
Compared to these other numbers.
That's a car.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
The highest it's ever sold for was $39,600. That was in 2024, way post boom.
I'm telling you, these books seem to bounce up and down. It depends on who's buying. And once you get one, you're not going to need another one. So the market keeps changing on who's buying, and it's going to change the price.
A 9/6 is a lot different. A 9/6 recently sold in 2025 for $5,394.
That's I bought one for $5,000, sold it for about the same amount. So
The highest it's ever sold for a 9/6 was $6,550. That was in 2023.
yeah, so in 9/6 it's not doing a lot, but I think it's stable. I also think if you want this book, you could get a really nice copy in 9/2. Or, I mean, I think it gets a little competitive as you get into lower grades because those lower prices start to drive the price up because people are like, well, I don't have to spend $5,000.
But I'll spend a few hundred. I mean, you can
I
get
thought it was going to be
low.
12 and the auction went to 15. Next thing you know, that book starts going up in price because they're more available. And I think there's always going to be more people that want this book in grade. They can find them.
You could get a low grade raw copy for around $200.
Yep.
It's going to look bad though. It's not going to look as good.
It's always going to look good because it's this, but
That's
you
true.
know what she's saying.
I have seen a rag of this book and it's still cool, but once you see a 9/6, it's kind of hard to go back. Unless you have the money. Anyway, next up is Night Nurse number 1 from 1972. The first appearance of the Night Nurse, who is Linda Carter. Win Mortimer did the cover. Never heard of him before now.
This has always been a cult book. We're just going to talk about it for a second. We're going to move on. because she got brought to the MCU and there's going to be a future with her. I think she was in the Daredevil universe. Man, is this character always popular. There's a bunch of people that want this book, and one of the reasons why it's hard to find.
There's only 514 graded copies. There's 4 9/8s, 10 9/6s, and 23 9/4s. So very low census and high grade.
Caveat, when I say hard to find, I mean generally. In the real world, there's a lot.
Well,
hard to find, there's 5 copies.
There's not a lot
more.
of sales. There's not a lot of sales.
Yeah, people don't sell them when they get them. This is an expensive book. You'll find that when you find one, there's going to be a lot of people that want it.
Well, so a 9/8, the last 9/8 sale was in 2024, and it sold for $28,800.
That's insane.
And
of a book that most of the people watching this, I don't think have ever heard of, unless they've been around the hobby for a long time.
A lot of money. And the highest it's ever sold for isn't too far off from that. It was $33,600. That was in 2022. Not far off from how much it sold for now, though. Like, it's pretty comparable.
And there's so many books we're not talking about from this era, but we wanted to throw Night Nurse in there just to show you that there are books like this that are really expensive, but they're also really cool. And if you saw A Night Nurse #1, I think it was a short run 4-part, if I remember.
I remember seeing a reprint of it, and I liked the cover.
Yeah, it's fun. I think if you saw one and you know about it, your heart would stop a little. If you found it at a garage sale or something, right? So...
All right, the next book is Amazing Spider-Man 129 from 1974, the first appearance of the Punisher. John Romita did his thing, drawing that cover.
I think it's a book that every single person wants.
I mean, the Punisher's great. So is
it's
Spider-Man.
A great cover.
It is a good cover.
It's a great cover, and the Punisher, guys, is such a cool character. I don't know if any of you watched Daredevil. I've watched the latest season, then I went back and watched all the other seasons. I give it a 10 out of 10. I love what they're doing in that series, and the Punisher's a big part of it. I think there's a future in pop culture for more Punisher stuff.
I mean, he's already kind of ingrained into the culture.
Frank Castle, man, all day long. He's such a cool character. Yeah.
All right, so for this book, there are 17,110 total graded copies. There are a lot of them out there.
It's because Spider-Man was always so popular, so a lot of people have always collected Spider-Man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why the Batmans, you'll see a lot of issues because Batman was so popular during the time.
Yeah.
Where Night Nurse, no one even knew who it was.
No one knows her.
Yeah.
151 9/8s. That's like the most 9/8s that we've had so far, I think. And 594 9/6s. Holy crap.
I'll bet you out of those 9/8s, a bunch of them have been pressed 50 times.
Probably.
It's like,
resubmitted.
It's still a 9/6. Oh man, this book's so expensive. I need to press it one more time and submit it. I'll do it 90 times if I can get another grade.
The numbers on this is actually crazy, like the difference. So the most recent sale in 2025 was $15,000.
Okay.
That's pretty low.
Gone down from its high, I'll tell you that.
The highest it's ever sold for, $57,000 in 9/8. That was during the boom, 2022. But still, like, what a difference. What a huge 3x.
Yeah.
That's crazy. 9/6, the most recent sale was in 2025 for $6,075.
Wow, that's down so much.
Huge, drastic down.
Yeah.
Highest it's ever sold for 9/6 was $14,000.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because there's so many of them.
Is this the bottom? Is this as low as it's ever going to go, guys? What do you think? Drop it in the comments. I don't think so.
I wish that I had access to how many were slabbed then versus now, because I think that would help us kind of figure out why the prices have changed so much, other than the boom. Like, don't talk about the boom, but just in general, because there's no way that there were 560 or 94 9/6s 5 years ago.
I think people are really gravitating towards wanting raw copies to save money because the premiums are so high on these professionally graded books. Anyway.
Well, a low grade copy raw is still around like $600. So it's still super not easy to get in an affordable price.
Everyone wants this book. Everybody. People who don't know about comics, I'd take one of those. Not for $600, but I'd like to own one.
All right, we're down to our last book of the video. This is Giant Size X-Men #1.
Yeah.
Ending with a bang. 1975, the first appearance of the new X-Men, second appearance of Wolverine.
Funny story about that. I watched a video with the guy who found the Mile High collection, Chuck Krasinski, who found the Mile High collection out of Colorado found another collection called the Mile High 2. There's a video you got to watch on YouTube about him telling the story about how he got it from some mob guy who was coked up. Crazy story, and semi-trucks worth of books. He had mentioned he had over 500 copies of this book. Think about that, 500 copies. Let's talk about the numbers. And that's massive for a key of the numbers that we're about to shoot.
Yeah, so Giant Size X-Men #1, there are 12,312 total graded copies on the census.
It's a lot.
There's 199, 277 9/8s, 464 9/6s.
That's really good. I mean, because it's square bound, it's a little bit harder to keep in condition without the staple rubbing through the paper and some things about production.
Yeah, square bound books are
this book is popular. It's starting to go up in price again. Me and my brother talk about it because he wants one. So he's always watching the market, and he would like to get one in 9.4, but he'd settle for a really nice 9.2, which is how real collectors that aren't necessarily about value, but they like, what a book looks like, will start to make those kind of negotiations with themselves. So what are the numbers like in this book?
So I just threw in the 9.9 sale because it was there. So the 9.9 sold in 2024 for $170,000.
Good for you, whoever sold that. Mazel tov.
Wow. Okay, so a 9.8 sold in 2025 for $21,600.
It's gone way down.
Because the highest it's ever sold for was $72,000.
And I remember when that sold, we thought that it was sky's the limit.
Ooh.
And this was one of the victims of the comic boom, that people thought these things would hit a price and stay there, and they didn't. But let me tell you, this is the first team appearance of them. It is the second appearance of Wolverine. It is an important comic book for the 1970s. We're ending it with this book because it was incredibly important. To me, the cover's a little bit boring. It's not like...
it's just the characters are there.
It's not like what I think is a beautiful comic from the 70s. I'm more of a cover collector than a story collector, where this is about the story and about what it's set up with these new characters.
All right, so a 9.6 recently sold in 2025 for $10,500. So half of a 9.8, which is actually pretty good.
Not bad.
That's pretty good. The highest it ever sold for in 9.6 was $29,300.
Yeah, no, if you got one for 10, you're probably really happy. It's an important book.
It's a pretty good deal. And you can get a low grade copy between $400 and $500 raw. Yikes.
We've had a couple of low grade copies of this.
We have the 70s.
So let's talk about this from an investment perspective, and also just like a cost analysis. So
as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at this through the lens of a rating scale through 5 key points.
Yep.
And each key point we rate 1 through 5, 1 being low, 5 being high, and the in-between. So we'll start with the first key point, availability. Are these books available for people to purchase?
I think you can find tons of books, and maybe not the ones that we just broke down, but tons of Bronze Age books in dollar boxes. If grade is not an issue with you, I think you can get all of these books. Very few are rare, I'd say none are rare, actually, unless I don't know about, one, but they're not rare. You can find them. If you start to go up in grade, boy, that metric goes down where they get really price prohibitive, but you can still find one. We just talked about these big swings, and a lot of people may not want to buy a book for $70,000 that's worth $20,000. So I think there's a little more time that needs to happen to see where they land in the next decade.
Well, because even low-grade copies of some of these big keys are a lot of money, more than, like a $20, whatever.
There's an old saying, low grade's better than no grade, and some
true.
people just want a copy, yeah.
So for availability in the 1970s, out of 5, we gave this a 3.5.
You can find these books.
You can find them.
They're not like, every convention's not going to have every one of these. It's not the way it works, but you'll find yourself kind of really scratching around to find copies of some things. And that's why it's not like a 5.
Right. Could you get a 9.9 Giant Size X-Men #1? Probably not.
No. I mean, if you're looking for all of these in the highest grade possible, then if money's no object to you, I think it's achievable. Not
easy, though, and it will take a long time. Demand is our second key point. Do people want to buy these books? Do people care about the books from the 1970s? Do people want to buy them and sell them?
On the key side, it's very high. On the back issues, I'd say it's kind of low. So it lands at...
We gave it a 3.
Yeah.
And we sell books like this all the time. So,
This,
for us, yes, it's
this
a 5.
is our specialty.
We sell books but when we also specialize in high grade, which are harder to find. So we gave it a 3 overall because people are still buying them.
Yeah, the higher grade I have, they get pricey. But what's pricey for the 70s? I mean, I might have a 9.4 that's $14 or $16. Some people might say, I can get that for $5. I say, get it for $5 and very fine. You should if that you're happy with that. But once you start getting into higher grade, anything over a 9.2 is very tough from the early 70s. Yeah.
Yes. The third key point is price. Are they selling? Can these books sell? Are people paying the price they're priced at?
Yep.
They are. We gave it a 3.5.
Yeah, I would say that there are some of our best sellers, and we focus on it, and unfortunately our customers kind of gravitate towards it. People want the high grade ones because the paper's a little nicer back then. The books are just great in high grade, and there's a lot of collectors out there for that. I think the low grade stuff moves if it's priced right. If it's overpriced, it's just a dead stop on this.
The next key point is track record of sales. Do they have a consistent sales record? As we get further and further away from 2025, the higher this number gets because we have consistent sales records of all of these. We gave track record of sales a 3.5.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about these huge swings that primarily happen in the Bronze Age, more than the Silver Age. I think we need to get farther away from it. I would not confidently tell you that the high price that we mention on every book is the price you should pay. I don't know if they're done getting, hammered, and I don't know what the future holds on this era of collectibles. So
depends on the book, because there are some books that we talked about today that have stayed pretty consistent, even with the highest it's ever sold for.
Yeah.
But then some of them are obviously like 3x different. So
yeah, the variation's massive. Yeah.
So 3.5. And then the final key point is relevance. Do people care about these books? Is it going to be relevant in the future?
They care big time.
We gave this a big 5.
Yeah. No, the 70s, I'm curious to see 20 years from now if I would feel the same way. The 70s is very impactful for pop culture today and for collectors today. And even, I've met a bunch of people who collect 50 pre-code books that also like 70s books. Of any other era, they're like, I really like pre-code and 70s because of the covers. And that particular group of collectors is very cover-centric because from 50 to 53, there were some incredibly graphic, violent, and just good art covers that are very popular. It's not until the 70s that really happens again at that level. Mm-hmm. Like that's a 10 out of 10. And then next cover, that's a 10 out of 10. So we showed a lot of those covers, but there's so many we didn't talk about. So it's a relevant era. And there's a couple of other relevant eras, but this one's a big one. Yeah.
Well, and I think the MCU also just like kind of solidifies that because so many MCU stories are based off of the books that we're
characters
talking about.
From this era. Yeah.
So many pop culture references, movies, TV shows, things, storylines now, they all go back to now, to the 70s. So after tallying up the numbers, we have 18.5 out of 25, which is an overall 3.75 for the decade of the 70s.
So it matches the 80s, right?
It's exactly the same as the 80s.
70s, 80s are great periods of time. I wouldn't put too much weight on our little grading scale. We just wanted to have talking points, and I think the 70s is great for investors. You should know what you're buying. Don't buy things you don't know about. And also be really cognizant, even if it's low grade, that you know what grade it is when you're buying it, because you don't want that Marvel stamp cut out. You don't want rusted staples and other things that are endemic of books that are 50 years or older, right? So I would put that out there to wrap things up. Like and subscribe us if you like this type of content. We have a lot more coming.
Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on eBay. Follow us here. Please subscribe to the channel, please.
See ya. Bye.